Okay, so this guy is... Oh my. Hey, hi folks, this is Chunkak here, and I want to talk about the new Faser Beam build that I've been trying to get. I'm trying to put together for quite some time now. It's been almost a month, and this build is very different from the traditional Akari set build that you normally have. And it basically focuses on one Phaser Beam mod. This entire build is around one Phaser Beam mod. And the best part about this build is that you do not need any legendary gear for it. You can go all purple as long as you have the right set pieces. You have the right mods in the gear that you equip. Let's go over the build quickly. Let's start off with my weapons and some of the important things that you need to have as part of the build. And I'll explain why they're important when I use the gear pieces. Is the first important part is status power. Basically it increases the damage of burning, toxic, or bleeding, and the increase to the duration of freeze, ash, vulnerable, and weakness. Why is this important? We'll talk about it later on. The second important aspect is armor pierce, and third is resistance pierce. And while we go over the gear, I'll talk about them as to why these are important. Now, coming to the guns, uh, the first gun that I'm using right now is basically a Thunderbird. Essentially, the only use for this gun right now for me is to apply fire damage to elites. What you essentially do is you're applying burn and fire uh, to the enemies, which helps you kill them pretty fast. It becomes very relevant, especially when you're hitting elites with it. Your captains, your alpha perforos, your brood mothers, your behemoths. Uh, and why is it important? Because it basically helps one of the mods that we've got on our boots, which is Master Consumer. And we'll come to that as we go to the rest of the gear. The second gun that I'm using is Funeral Pyre, but essentially what you should be looking at is Shadow Comet and Claymore Torrent and Claymore. What it is a shotgun that spreads its bullets across the board. So every enemy that gets hit by the bullet from this gun basically procs or gets hit by a shadow comet of their own. So if there are 5 enemies who get hit by the bullets from Funeral Pyre, all of them will get hit by Shadow Comet and Claymore Torrent. A very good gun to have, especially if you've got enemies close by in a group. Now, the third thing that I'm using, and this is my main weapon, which is a pistol. And while I'm using Detronome, ideally, and I've not tested it out, but ideally you can even use Fortress over here. But the reason I'm using Detronome is because I essentially run this build only for expeditions, and even in the trials, I use it for the entire trials except for the final arbiter. The rest of the trials, the expeditions, I do not shoot a lot to proc the damage, but essentially, instead of Detronome, you can also use Fortress. And what Fortress ends up doing is basically increase your damage by 25%. And what it at full stacks, it increases your damage by 25%, which helps out killing enemies much faster. The most important mod over here is Mage's Rage. whenever you're hitting critical shots to enemies, you basically get 10% anomaly power for 15 seconds, and it stacks up to 4 times. So you're increasing your anomaly power like crazy, and what it helps you do is basically get rid of enemies much faster. Now, coming back to Detronome. Now, Detronome basically, what it states essentially is that whenever you've got 0 skills or 1 skill on cooldown, you basically get 450k anomaly power buff. So in my case, since I'm using ashblast and Faser Beam, and then I go to overheat, both my uh, ashblast and my Faser Beam basically get a 450k anomaly power buff, which is great for me. And like I said, since I don't shoot a lot, because this build pretty much clears everything. Sometimes I get crits as well. Critical damage, which increases my anomaly power. But even if I don't end up getting that, I end up clearing the map. Which is why if you're not getting a lot of crits, it might be a good idea to put Fortress in there. I've not tried so much with Fortress. I'm sticking to Dreadthronome for my build. And then the third mod over here is improved Ashen Bullets. It's not very relevant, but especially if you're shooting a big boss like a behemoth who's charging you, it helps you inflict ash and maybe freeze in that place for a few seconds. Now, coming back to why armor pierce, and we'll cover that as well. Why armor pierce and resistance pierce are important. But let's go over to my helm first. Now, like I said before, you can build this entire build with all purple gear. You do not need to have any set bonus. And when I say set bonus, I'm talking about bonus that you get with a set. Like if you look at the bottom for this chest, it talks about the set bonus, which is for the Akari chest. If you look at the pants that I have, the lower robe of the lava lich, it has a different set bonus. In this build, none of the set bonus is active. I'm the only reason I'm using legendary gear over here, and it's totally different legendary gear, is because I found the right attributes in the mods in them. But if I were to find those on purple gear, I would completely go with them as well. Now let's come to the helm. My helm is basically Ronin Zamigasa. Now, any numbers that you see over here in terms of anomaly power and anomaly damage are basically at tier 40. If you are a lower tier, the number could be much lower, but all these numbers are at a max level character. But essentially, whatever level you are at, the numbers that show up for those mods are good enough for that tier. Now, coming back to arms and anomaly. Arms and anomaly, basically, critical shots increase your anomaly power by 650k. So even if you get one critical shot on an enemy, immediately increases your anomaly power by 650k for 6 seconds. Very important. The second is I'm going to talk about anomaly echo. As soon as you activate a skill, you get a roughly about a 400k anomaly power bonus for 6 seconds. So again, what you see over here is two mods that help us increase our anomaly power, which increases our ability to kill enemies across the map. The third mod is one of the best mods for ashblast. What it essentially says is let's forget the weapon damage, but let's talk about the anomaly damage. Any enemy that gets hit by ashblast, they see a 30% increase in anomaly damage for 5 seconds. Very important, especially if you're hitting somebody with ashblast. Because of death sentence, they'll see a 30% increase in the damage when they get killed by overheat. So, which is a very good mod to have. The second thing, this is my chest piece, which is the Akari chest piece, and I'm using it because I found the right mods in it. Uh, Detonator is one of the overheat mods, very important for us because it helps us reduce our cooldown. And why is cooldown important? It becomes very important, especially when you're in very tough spots, because your skills also help you, get some health back. So having a lower cooldown for detonator, which is our main damage source, also ensures that we can go through skill rotations pretty fast. The second mod, I'll talk about no resistance against the fortified. Increases your resistance pierce by 65% of your armor pierce. Now, why is this important? And if you see my armor PS is right now 50%, let's go to the third mod, Unstoppable Force. It increases your anomaly power by 50% of your resistance PS. So what essentially I'm doing over here is I'm increasing my armor PS And because my armor pierce is increased, 65% of that increases my resistance pierce, which in turn increases my anomaly power. Now, if you look at the skill damage bonus that I'm getting over here, while I have an armor pierce gun over here, as soon as I reduce the sorry at a 50% armor pierce, my skill damage bonus is 79,906. As soon as I switch to a gun which does not have status power, look at the skill damage bonus. We roughly about lost about 20k worth of 20k percentage worth of skill damage bonus, which is why armor pierce is very important. Okay, and going back to this. So that's my chest, and which is why these mods are very important. No resistance against the fortified and unstoppable force. Essentially, these are mods to gain anomaly power. The third is the lower robe of the lava lich. Again, like I said, you do not need to have a legendary gear. You can have a purple gear. And the most important mod over here, and this is true for any build for any class, be it firepower, anomaly power, or hybrid, you need to have this mod on your build, which is Captain Hunter, which increases your damage against elites by 16%. There's no build in Outriders that you can build without using Captain Hunter. I mean, you can, but it'll take a lot of time to kill enemies off. The second important aspect of using this build, second important mod is Size Matters, which increases the radius of a Faser Beam by 100%. Very important. It sort of gives some sort of an AOE for you, especially if you've got enemies lined up, spaced out a little bit in a single line. It helps you hit all of them with your Faser Beam. And the third thing is Frequent Phaser, which increases the skill cooldown by 30%. Uh, Very important again, because you want to get your skill rotations out of the way as soon as possible, because that's what will help you clear the map faster. Now, coming to my gloves, not back to my gloves. Uh, I'll talk about the other two mods, which is Pure Power and Ash Increase Range. Ash Increase Range, as it says, increases the spread of your Ash. So you're able to hit more enemies, cover more ground. Your AoE is much larger. Uh, so you're able to hit more enemies and becomes very relevant for you to clear ads on the map. The second mod is Pure Power, which is the top mod. While I'm using it, I want to see if I can replace it with something else, if possible, to see if it benefits. I'm not really sure what mod I'll use over here, but right now I've got Pure Power, which increases the skill damage for the Phaser Beam. And now coming to the final mod, which is the most important, which is the should I say, which is the center point for this build, is Ashen Champion. What does Ashen Champion do? It's a Phaser Beam mod. You inflict ash on enemies instead of burn. Now remember, folks, Phaser Beam is a burn skill. It's a fire skill. So if you didn't have this mod, when you hit somebody with uh, Phaser Beam, you're essentially hitting them with fire or burn. But what this mod does is it converts it to ash. Now the second line is very important. Each enemy hit boosts your anomaly power by 20% for 10 seconds. Stacks up to 5%, 5 times. So essentially, when what you're looking to do is basically boost your anomaly power by hitting a minimum of 5 enemies, so that you're able to clear the map much faster. This is the crux of the entire build. This is a non-negotiable mod that you need to have for this build to succeed. And now coming to the final uh, uh, gear, which is my boots. I've got Phoenix Force, Power Assimilation, and Master Consumer. Now, Phoenix Force essentially earn additional 69k anomaly power per status consumed by the skill for 8 seconds, stacks up to 10 times. So, very simple example would be that if you hit 10 enemies with ashblast, you essentially, and when you hit overheat, when you consume this, using overheat, you basically get roughly about 690k worth of anomaly power. It's again a mod to boost your anomaly power. The second is power assimilation, a boost your anomaly power by 250k for each elite present on the field. Now, what is an elite? An elite is a captain that you see in, say, Boomtown. It's Alpha Perforos, it's the Behemoth, it's the Broodmother. So if on the map at any given point of time, if you've got these elites on the field on the map, They essentially, each one of them contributes to 250k worth of anomaly power. I'm not really sure if there's a cap on how much anomaly power you can get, but at least I'm not aware of it. But if you've got at any given point of time, even if you've got 4 or 5 elites on the map, you essentially are gaining 250k worth of anomaly power for each one of them. And then the final and the most important mod over here is master consumer. So what essentially overheat does is it consumes status, which is either burn or ash. So even if you're going Akari, if you know you put burn or fire onto enemies and you consume it with overheat, it will consume it. Or if you're just putting ash blast and consuming it, will consume ash as well. But if you are consuming both burn and ash together, the damage that overheat does is increased by 150%. Very relevant. Why? Because we are always putting fire on our elites. You essentially don't need to do it for the regular the green spitters, the riflemen, or the perforers that you see on the map. But any elite that you see on the map, you first hit them with the firestorm gun before you basically proc your anomaly power with Mage's Rage and arms in anomaly. And then when you know that the enemy has been hit by both burn and ash from your ash blast, is when you hit overheat, it will immediately wipe off that elite. A very important and a great mod for overheat. Now the other important thing is that I have all of my gear has status power. And why is this relevant? I'll talk about in the next section. Even my pistol that I'm using has got status power. Now coming back to the skills that you have to use and the rotation that you use is basically using Ash Blast. You hit 5 enemies with Phaser Beam and then you wipe them off with Overheat. Now, we always talk about status power. Why is it important? Let's look over here. It's basically the description for Phaser Beam. What Phaser Beam does is fire an energy beam that deals XYZ damage that benefits from 210% of your status power. Inflicting burn, in this case, we are not doing inflicting burn, we're inflicting ash because we've got Ashen Champion, and also interrupts the enemies. So the more status power you have, the more damage this will increase. The more damage you'll deal with Phaser Beam, this syncs synergizes really well with the anomaly power increase that you get because of the various mods. And essentially, what you're doing over here is, like I said, when you hit Ash Blast, the enemy that's hit by Ash Blast, they see roughly about they see a 30% increase in anomaly damage that gets hit onto them. Then you're also hitting them with Mage's Rage and Arms and Anomalies. So your anomaly power goes up, and then finally, when you hit them phaser and overheat, you're literally wiping out the entire map. Now, important thing to note over here that the main damage source over here is overheat. It's not phaser beam. Phaser beam is just like a big stick that you have to use to increase your anomaly power. So, which is why I said I want to try and test out if I can get rid of pure power, which is the mod that I've got on my gloves, and see if I can use something else, maybe Ashen Boost or I don't know what else. But that is the skills that we're using. The other important thing over here is, and let me go to the skill tree and then I'll come back to this. Let's go to the skill tree. Now, the skill tree looks like this. Now, what does the Pyromancer do? The Pyromancer basically gives you a 10% additional damage, and skills mark damage enemies for 15 seconds. Killing a marked enemy heals you by 24% of your max health. So, any enemy that you hit with your Ash Blast, with your Phaser Beam, or your Overheat gets marked. And we'll come to know why this is important. Now, the skill tree looks like this. We are obviously taking Marble Orchard because we want to reduce the skill cooldown for Ash Blast. We're taking Armor Pierce because Armor Pierce affects your uh, Resistance Pierce, and then Resistance Pierce increases your anomaly power. And then finally, we're taking Hot Situation, basically increases your anomaly power by 45% for 10 seconds. This is a free anomaly power buff. As soon as you hit Ash Blast, you get a 45% anomaly power buff. Now, coming to the bottom tree, it goes like this. We obviously have to take Archmage, which are these circles that you see in the center. You cannot skip them. Even if they were in a skippable position, you would still take them because they are one of the most important skill tree nodes over here. We are also going to take marks accumulation, which are these skill nodes. What it essentially does is increases your skill damage by 8% against marked enemies. Now remember over here, any enemy that gets hit by any of your skills, they get marked. So what you're doing essentially over here is increasing the damage against those marked enemies. As we come down over here, gifted is a very important skill node to have. It gives you an anomaly power boost of 5%. If you were not using Ashen Boost, I'm not really sure if this is a good mod to have. Meltdown, but Burn Afflicted on enemies does 20% more damage, which is relevant, especially if you're using the Ikari set. I'm not completely built it out, but if you're using the Ikari set, using Heat Wave and using Phaser Beam, in that case, we are not using Ashen Champion, and both of those apply Burn, and the Burn is will give 20% more damage. I'm also using with fire anomaly over here because activating explosive skill increases your anomaly power by 12% for 10 seconds. So when I do Ash Blast and I do Phase Beam and I do Overheat, once I do Overheat, it increases my anomaly power for 12% for 10 seconds, which is very good because my skill cooldowns are pretty decent. Here I'm using Resistance to increase survivability, and there's configuration over here which increases your resistance pierce by 15%. So in case, like I said before, armor pierce to resistance pierce to anomaly power, this is a very important node, and anyways you cannot skip it, you have to take it. Flames that burn twice increase damage against release by 10%, great. And then the final capstone, which is Grave Blaze, increase explosive skill damage base damage by 30%. In this case, overheat is our explosive skill damage, so we get a 30% buff on top of it. Now, the packs tree is one of the important points. Ideally, ideally, if you had multiple uh, explosive skills, you would essentially go for trigger sequence. What trigger sequence does is activating an explosive skill increases the damage of your next explosive skill by 35%. Buff stacks up to 3 times, after which it starts new. So in this case, since we are using only one overheat, and by the way, it does not expire during a skill rotation, it gets carried forward to the next skill rotation. In my case, overheat is a skill over here. So what it does is basically when I press overheat the first time, it basically sets up my next overheat with a 35% increase buff, which is the bomb icon that you can see at the bottom left corner on top of my health. It is the extreme right icon that you can see on top of my health. It looks like a bomb. So my next overheat will hit with 35% damage. The next one will hit with 70% damage. And the one after that will hit with 105% damage, after which the benefit is lost and it will start all over again. But in this case, since we don't have multiple, uh, you know, uh, explosion skills, we've just got one overheat. I'm not sure it helps a lot, especially it might help if you are against a very powerful enemy and you go through your skill rotations twice or thrice or 4 times. It definitely helps, but I do not prefer you going it like that. I normally would go like this. I would basically use melting point, I'll use master exploder, I'll use convection, conduction, and backdraft. Melting point again increases your resistance pierce 80% above 80% health or below 30%. There's a buff that you get. This increases your explosive skill damage. In this case, it's overheat by 50% of your resistance pierce. Convection reduces your skill cooldown by 2 seconds when all skills are on cooldown. And basically, what I understand is the 3 seconds is anyways some 3 second cooldown is anyways that convection as a PAX 3 point gives. So on top of it, you get 2 additional percent. The other important part is backdraft. So your anomaly power is increased by 25% for each skill on cooldown. So when I start with ashblast, my anomaly power is increased by 25% for my Phaser Beam, and then when I do Phaser Beam, my 2 skills are on cooldown, I get a 50% buff for my overheat. And finally, one of the most important PAX 3 points over here is conduction. It reduces your skill cooldowns by 15%. Very important. because what we are trying to do over here is fit in as many rotations as possible, because what you want to constantly do is be able to fire your phaser beam so that you're able to basically get the anomaly power buff by hitting multiple enemies, 5 enemies in this case, to get that benefit to do additional damage. So this is the PAX 3 point that I use, and I've maxed out this character, so all the ascension points are maxed out. But if you're starting off a character, you essentially want to start putting points into anomaly damage. Once you max that out, you go into anomaly power, you go into resistance pierce, you go into armor pierce, damage release, depending on what makes sense. If you want to survive, you won't want to put points into endurance. It's your choice. But essentially it's an anomaly power build, so you need to max out anomaly damage and anomaly power before going on to other areas. Now, this gear is very important. Like I said, this build, Ashen Champion is a must-have mod that you must have. And essentially, what you're looking to is once you get on the map is if you have a elite on map, like in Boomtown, there's a captain. As soon as you enter the map, you hit him with your fire gun, which puts firestorm onto him. It basically puts burn onto him. Then you put ash out, so basically it freezes a lot of enemies because of the ash. You basically proc your mage's rage and arms in anomaly, or in which case your fortress as well. You proc them by critting and hitting enemies, and then you do the phaser beam and overheat. In most cases, after ash and your phaser beam, if enemies are lined up, all of them would pretty much be dead, and you'll probably just need to finish off that last captain for the last sliver of health he has with overheat. But this is the gist of the build. I have one important point to note, which I've repeated earlier on as well, is that uh, this thing is this build is good for literally all expeditions, uh, and it's good for, like I said, the entire trials except for the final arbiter. You can still kill the final arbiter; it'll just take a lot of time, and you might want to put in some survivability mods over there. But it's not ideal for uh, the final arbiter. Rest, everybody is fair game. All the expeditions, the entire trial is fair game. I've in fact streamed on my Twitch as well. You can go and check that out. I've run through the entire trials. It's only for the final arbiter. You can switch to a much more powerful set, which is maybe a Lava Lich, a Scott Zealot. In my case, I use the Trigger Twitch, which is a very powerful set again for killing the arbiters solo. While coming back to expeditions, this is good enough for you to play solo, duos, tiers, depending on who you're playing with. It becomes a little difficult if you're playing with the Technomancer because they freeze everything and it's very difficult for you to, get your buffs up. But anybody else, it's fair game. It's a very good class and a very good build to play for Phaser Beam. I've always wanted to build a Phaser Beam. I did not like the Akari set for Phaser Beam, and I'll tell you why. The primary skill over there is Heat Wave, which helps you get your anomaly power up. I don't like the animation where you have to basically, and I would have had two Heat Waves over here, but the animation is not something that I prefer because it takes a lot of time. Uh, it's much more easier to just do ashblast and mark all the enemies and then hit them with phaser beam, hit 5 with phaser beam, and ideally hit them with overheat. Essentially, when I enter a map, I've hit ashblast, proc all my mods to help my anomaly power up, shoot 5 enemies with phaser beam, and then do my overheat as well. In most cases, once you hit them with phaser beam, they're pretty much all dead. So, which is why I first go and hit an elite with my fire gun, and then I switch to my pistol, proc all my arms and anomaly and mage's rage, hit 5 enemies with phaser beam, and then do the overheat. This is the ideal way. Please let me know your comments in the description below. I don't believe anybody has built this right now. If I've made some mistake in basically uh, explaining the meaning of some of the mods or the skill tree points or the packs tree points, please let me know in the comments below. Please be kind. I'm referring to one person. Only one person in this world who'll go crazy, but nevertheless, nevertheless, that's it. It's a very good build and very fun build to have. If you're bored, especially of using the standard sets, which is the Lava Lit set or the Scott Lit, you can literally just stand in the center of the map, do Ash Blast, fire Phaser Beam, do Overheat. It's only against very tough enemies, uh, like a shaman or a shaman or a blood merchant, in which case you'll have to move around a lot. Rest of them, you can literally stand in one place, shoot, just move out of their shooting arc, or maybe hide behind covers and then just kill them off with overheat. That's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know in your comments, thoughts. If you want, if you would be going ahead and building this, do check out my Twitch channel as well. It's the same name, Junkake, and I do stream on Twitch as well. So if you want to join to level up your character, please let me know. Although I would also say that if it's the first character that you're building, first class that you're building, always play with people at which are on the same level as you, because it takes the fun out of the game if you're getting leveled up free of cost without doing anything. Uh, so always level up your first class with players at the same level as you. The second, third, fourth class is something that you can use, somebody else to help you level up much faster. That's it from me. Thank you so much. This is Chun Kakeya. Have a great day.